What's up guys, welcome back to another video. Today we are working on the Piaggio Ciao again. We got the parts from JMB, so we're gonna install them. I'm gonna start with the forks first and the wheel assembly and the brake assembly, because that is one of the most important parts, because now the bike isn't on its two wheels and it's pretty annoying to move it around. So that is what I'm gonna do today. I'm gonna try to complete the whole fork assembly with the wheel, with the brake, with the fork, everything lubricated, maintained and working again. Now here is the fork. It's still a little bit dirty, especially around here and where the bearings are. So I'm gonna have to clean this up. Also, what I need to clean is these pivot points. These are very rusty and I'm gonna take out the old bushings because I got some new ones and the old ones are pretty rusty, so I'm gonna replace those. Also, this whole assembly, I need to take the axle out, clean it all up and make it all nice and pretty again. So when we install the new parts, new brakes, lubricate everything, everything is perfect and we don't need to open it up again. The wheel is already clean. We did that in a last video. It's nice and perfect. The inside is perfect. No defects, because that can happen. What I'm now gonna do, I'm gonna clean everything and make everything shine again. So I'm just gonna spend some time cleaning the parts, making everything ready to be assembled. So I cleaned everything. I cleaned the pivot arms, the whole fork assembly, the bearing rings, the ball bearings, the cups where the bearings sit in. And this is the fork assembly. As I told in my last video, I cannot get these springs out, but we're gonna leave them right there. But here are the arms. They look decent enough. I was planning on painting them black, but that would be a hassle, so I just made them all clean again. Here are the new bushings and these are the old ones. As you can see, they are pretty rusty, so it's a good thing that we are gonna replace these. And we could just mash in the new bushings, but what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna grease it up with some bearing grease, just to make sure that we don't get bindings and everything slides in perfectly. And if we ever want to take it apart, it will come out easily. So get yourself a soft hammer, a block of wood and your pieces. Now check how everything works and comes together. So we're gonna have to put a ring in first, then the spacer like this, and then mash in the last ring, because they push through, but yeah, it's not ideal to do that. So first one, get some bearing grease in there. You don't need much, and spread it all around so it's nice and lubricated. Get one side of the bushing and put some bearing grease on there and just spread it around. Put one end in, make sure it's straight, and then soft taps to get it in there. You will hear the noise when you come at the bottom. It will sound different. And the first one is in. Now let's put some bearing grease on the shaft. Not much, like this. Spread it around. This will also prevent rust. Get your next bushing. Tiny dab of bearing grease. Spread it around. Now place it inside. And here for the sound when you notice it. Soft tap, other tap. And that's how you replace your bushings. It looks all nice and pretty again in comparison to the old one. This looks much more better. Now do the other one and then you can assemble the fork again. Now to assemble these arms to the forks, you just need to do the opposite way when you remove them. This is the way I did it. So the one with the tab goes on to this side. You just screw it in. Okay, that looks perfect. Then you put this in a vise. No worries, you're not hurting anything because the wheel clamps there. And you get your bolt. I'm gonna put on a little bit of bearing grease right here. Not on the threads, just on the shaft. And then it's a little tricky, but you need to push like this until you see the hole. And that's in. It's a little bit tricky doing it with one person. And there it is, all assembled again. Now I'm gonna do the other side. So your pivot arms are now completely assembled. They rotate freely, but these bolts are not locking bolts. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna put some blue Loctite on the end of the threads so that they never accidentally come loose. Let's tighten them up, see if they still move. Yes. Now that the forks are reassembled again, we can now put them back on the bike. But before we do that, we want to do some preparation. I cleaned this out where the bearing sits, but on the bike itself, it's still dirty. The bottom one and the underside. I cleaned the bearings. They look pretty good, pretty nice. And I cleaned the ball bearings. Now we're gonna clean this top one and the bottom one. So what I got some old gasoline. I'm gonna put a rag over this. Get a toothbrush, dip it in your gasoline, and then just remove all the old grease. Because what is the point putting in new grease if you're gonna leave the old? Make sure it's absolutely clean. And as you can see, it is all nice and pretty again. There's a little bit of rust spots, but I'm not really worried about that. Now the underside, we're gonna use the same technique. And the underside, nice and pretty again. So now comes the fun part, assembling this back to this. For this we're gonna need our copper grease and our bearing grease. Now I have to say guys, with these style of bearings, you have to put them in the correct way, because otherwise you will ruin your bearings. So make sure you have the right orientation, because if you put them in on the wrong side, as you can see, this is how they sit wrong, this is how they sit right. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna load up the bearing with bearing grease, do it just like this. Also I'm gonna put some right here. Not too much. Okay, now that is lubed up. Now to prevent the struggle that I had from taking this apart, I'm gonna use some copper grease on the threads, so the threads will stay clean, lubricated, and if we ever need to take off the forks again, it will be much more easier. So this is the copper grease. Take a little and put it on your threads, and this is how it should look. Rotate it a little bit. Now we need our little doohickey right here. Don't know what it's called. It can only go on one way, so just gonna hand tighten it. What I'm doing now is feeling how the bearings roll. I feel a little bit of jumping around, like a little jiggering, but that is because they are old bearings, they are not new, and the couplers are a little bit damaged, so that is what I'm feeling. But of course with the new grease and me rotating, riding the bike, it will come loose again and it will roll really nicely. So that feels good to me. No play in the forks, whatever. Yeah, that's good. Good for me. Take a little bit of copper grease, put it right into here. You don't need a lot of this, but it is necessary if you ever want to take it apart again. Screw. Now let's get a big wrench and a piece of wood. And what you want to check if this doesn't rotate more, because then you will tighten up the bearings even more, and we don't want that. Feel it. This is the difficult part of doing this. I'm gonna rotate it a little bit back, so when I tighten it up, still too much. This is the difficult part. I mean, guys, don't be discouraged if you have to do this for a long time. No play, and rotates fairly freely. That is good in my book. Now, to prevent this nut to come loose, you have to secure it with the doohickey and bend this over. And that's it. That is how you reassemble your forks. Nice and smooth. So now let's do the front wheel so we can put it back in and we have a rolling bike again. So now it's time to assemble the front wheel. I have everything laid out, cleaned, every single new part, the brake shoes, the ball bearings, bolts, the axle. I've written down some measurements so I don't get it wrong. We got the wheel. Again, what we're gonna need is I'm gonna use some copper grease on the axle, and I'm gonna use bearing grease where the bearings are. So I'm just gonna do a time lapse of this because it's gonna be hard enough figuring it out at the moment. Let's get started. This is gonna be the most difficult part because everything needs to come together as good. Brakes, axle, bearings, brake lever, everything. So yeah, let's just get started. This is what new grease does. This is what lubricating and cleaning your wheel does. So what you want to do when you do stuff like this, make sure there is no wobble. It rotates freely. It can be a little bit stiff, don't make it too loose. It's still a bearing, yeah, but it doesn't bind up as much. I can feel a little clicking, but again, this wheel is 21 years old. It's not gonna be perfect, but it's good enough. The wheel is assembled. Time to put it back in the bike, and we will have a two-wheeler again. The brakes work perfect as well. So yeah. So everything is ready to be reassembled. I got the wheel, got the bike, got the fork, everything. Now there is a small modification that I did. I'm not gonna run a speedometer because this one is really old, it's really crusty, and I cannot really take it apart. To compensate for the spacing for the speedometer, I have to use a washer on that side. So yeah, no speedometer, it's not gonna be needed. We're just gonna track our speed with GPS, so that's gonna be okay. So now let's get the wheel back in here. Make sure everything is lined up. It's a little tap. Okay, so as you can see, he is back on his 2 feet, turns smoothly, and you saw the wheel rotate. Everything works as perfect as it should be. I'm pretty happy with this now. I'm pretty tired right now. I'm not gonna start the back wheel because the back wheel is gonna be a whole other issue, but we are making progress. I'm pretty happy with the result, the stuff that I was able to accomplish. I'm pretty happy now. Now the next step is gonna be the rear wheel. then put the handlebars, the controls and everything. That's gonna be a hassle as well. But we got all new cables from JMPB Parts. If you want to see all the parts that I bought, go to my Facebook page. I posted them there with all the links to buy them. Yeah, I'm pretty happy now. Can't wait to start the bike, ride it again. But it's a big step forward getting the fork back on with the suspension. I'm pretty happy about that. Now it should be pretty easy. I'm not gonna jinx it. Still need to put on the new tires, but first I want to get it complete. I'm gonna start with the rear tire, get a new tire right there before I put any oil in it. The front tire I can take off all the time. So that's gonna be it for this video, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to leave a like and a comment down below. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter and on Instagram. And if you are not already subscribed yet, subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate it. And I hope you have a good weekend and I'll see you in the next one.